YouTube, it's Brian Phillips. We got Starlink the other day, and so far it's been smooth sailing. We've been really happy with it, but we noticed one phenomena that we kind of had us scratching our heads, and that is we keep seeing people that are getting speeds over 100 megabits per second. And for us, we were not seeing that, except for on the Wi-Fi occasionally we would test as high as like 190 megabits per second, but only for very short periods. And I got to thinking about it, and I realized, oh boy, we have never actually had internet speeds over 100 megabits per second, even when we were in town on cable from our provider in Des Moines, Iowa, which was Mediacom. We were in Ankeny. Mm-hmm. So we were capable of getting over 100 megabits per second, but they never actually provided it. So we never cared. We never noticed. We never had any sort of drawbacks. But I figured out what was going on. Now, many of you guys have the same problem, and that's why we're bringing it to your attention. Here's just a current test from just about 10 minutes ago. And unfortunately, because the rain, I don't think we're going to test a whole lot faster than that. But we had a switch on the ground that was coming out from our wall jack, splitting to two different printers and then to our computer. Okay, so basically, when you have a switch involved, it didn't even occur to me because we've never had speeds fast enough to matter. We don't have gigabit switches. These are called ether fast switches, which is 10 megabits per second / 100 megabits per second. Gigabit speed, like this, is 10 / 100 / 1000 megabits per second, which means that this won't bottleneck your system. A switch is really simple. It doesn't do any routing controls. All it does is it takes one wire in and then it sends the data to the other wires. A router takes data in and then deciphers where it needs to go. So there's no routing happening on a switch. It's just basically like splitting the wires, okay? That's why it didn't even occur to me that a switch could be causing this issue. So anyway, we ended up going on to Amazon. We got the cheapest thing we could find. We're just going to overhaul what we currently have. We have two wireless, basically we have wireless routers that we're using as switches right now. Throughout our house, we have two of them, and then we have the Wi-Fi that's provided directly from the Starlink. And so no matter where you are in the house, you can get signal. It's not a mesh system. I was concerned about latency, so I've not gone with a mesh system yet. We want to use up everything we can without introducing new latency. So for now, we're going to switch out this one, and we'll see if we have an improvement in the speed, and we'll come right back and show you what it looks like. It's not rocket science putting this in, but if we run into problems, why don't we just go ahead and open the first one. These are both 8 ports. I think they were like less than $15 shipped prime, right?
Yeah, I think they were like right at 15.
So this comes with 8 ports each. You can get them in a 5-port configuration, and they're like $12. So they're even cheaper. And there was a TP-Link option, and we ended up going with this one. So we'll link to these just to give you guys an option. Obviously, we're going to open this and just show you what it looks like real quick. These, like I said, this isn't doing any routing. It's just a switch. So it's just kind of like literally splitting the cable. So let's just show you what comes in the box real quick. It should come with a power supply and the thing. Okay, so there's nothing else in there. It's got the normal kind of weird matte finished bags. Okay, we got one that was small just because we didn't need anything fancy. And that looks like it's going to suck dust like every other switch that we've ever had in the history of time. There's a little light for power and then a light for each of the network status, which is good. It's got wall mounts. And as per usual, there's no wall mount screws or anything, so you're going to have to provide that yourself if you wall mount it. And then the AC adapter, of course, it looks like a switching power supply here. The way you can tell is because they're much lighter. If it's got a big heavy-duty transformer and it's heavy, then that means it's not switching, so it's a little bit less energy efficient. And then on the back of here, it's going to tell you what it needs for input and output. This is 100 to 240 volts AC at 50 to 60 hertz at 0.3 amps of draw. So it's very low power consumption. And then this is putting out 9 volts at 600 milliamp hour, or 9 volts at 600 milliamps. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to have to plug this in and replicate what we've already got down there. Looks pretty straightforward, so we'll go ahead and get that set and we'll come right back. Okay, so we have the new switch put on the floor. I mean, this is just really simple, basic stuff. You don't have to be like some IT genius here. I have little lights that designate, it shows 1, 2, 3, that's power. And there's actually only 2 things hooked up. I believe it's the computer itself, and then this one's on Wi-Fi now, even though we have a wire landed on it. We, Saturday, decided to just stop working. And then this one might also be the same scenario. So we basically have the wall, and then we have the computer that are hooked together through this. So that can just be slid back into its hiding spot. And this is what we pulled out. And you can look on the front of it and it'll say 10100. Or sometimes it says it's somewhere on the bottom. And this is just very simple stuff. Like I wasn't even using the uplink. And that used the same power supply essentially. That would have been 9 volts at 500 milliamp hours. So this technically made 100 milliamps less, or 1/10 of an amp less power available to the old one. So who knows if there's maybe just a little bit of extra power going on. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and test this. There's one other point for a bottleneck, so this shouldn't make a difference yet. Okay, you wanna give me just a sec here? So we're just running the test now. Okay, so 90 megabits per second, unloaded latency, loaded latency, and then the upload speed. So we don't see a big difference yet, and we probably won't because we may actually not be getting over 100 right now from Starlink. But I suspect actually what's happening is we're going through another 10100 switch downstairs that also is acting as a wireless access point. And we have 2 of those, and those are fed into the network for our whole house. So we have to do this down there as well, because if you remember, we were like 89. So what we'll do is we'll go do the other one, and we'll just give you a quick shot at what we did when we're done with it, and then we'll come back up here and retest. Okay, so we're downstairs in the dungeon. We've got the old wireless setup. So this is going to be a 10100 configuration, if I remember right. And if I'm wrong, then this bottleneck doesn't matter at all. But this is where our network patch comes from upstairs. So you can plug it into any of the wires. Now that we have that, we can technically feed back up to the office, in our case. The office is, I just label all this stuff. The office is going to be here. That was convenient. And then we can feed the TV switch. We have another one of these upstairs right next to our TV so that it can kind of feed the living room. So now we'll just take a jumper wire and go from here back to this, and that will make our Wi-Fi continue to operate downstairs as it had previously. But now we won't have that bottleneck, and it's just like a matter of, you know, switching the wires over. And you can see the status lights going. Viastat's going to be ended here pretty quick. We just have a contract with them, and I think it ends this month.
The end of this month. Yep.
So, yeah. So all I have to do is just make a little jumper cable. And to be honest, maybe when I do my jumper cable, I'll put this up on the wall higher up so that it's going to give us a little better signal. But this is not doing any wireless at all. So we will come right back and show you a speed test now that that's done. Okay, so I'm sure you guys are probably curious. So we just mounted this on the side of the wall, and we just routed the cables up and over and then back down to this switch. So you can see all we did was we basically just hooked a cable between that. It's the gray one that goes up here. We're not all tied in yet just because we've got to undo some of this Viastat stuff in the next couple of days. So it just goes up here, and it just happens to go up over the top of the planes and then comes down to this other side. And there it is. So that'll serve the Wi-Fi downstairs. I couldn't mount it the other. I wanted to mount it the other direction, but it just the stud was not quite wide enough. So we'll show you the speed test next upstairs. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and test this now that we have what we knew were bottlenecks out of the circuit. There's still bottlenecks on the Wi-Fi side in that there are 10100 wireless switches. But those wireless switches are probably going to need to get upgraded at some point anyway. So they're still working now, but when we're ready to do that, we can get faster ones. For now, this should help with a wired network that feeds between our Starlink wireless that also acts as a router for the whole system downstairs, and then back up to this thing that you guys watch us install, and then into the back of the computer. So we'll just retest now. So it's just working through its process. Who knows? It's probably going to be like horrible now because we ran into some stupid problem, but and if it's worse, then that will help answer questions too. So far, it looks pretty bad.
Yeah.
Because we're in the kilobits per second.
Is it like not fully?
Yeah. Obviously, that's not right.
Bad.
So we're going to try that again. So we'll pause and come back. Okay, so we just ran the test again, and it's faster this time too by about like 10 times. So I don't know exactly why it is goofed up like that. But now that's pretty bad. That's like 10% of what we had before. So we're going to see what happens now when we do it again. And now we're at 130 megabits per second, 120 megabits per second, 130 megabits per second. That's the first time we've had 100 megabits per second or faster on this computer with 54 milliseconds of latency, 83 milliseconds of latency loaded, and then our upload speed should improve too. And I don't know how or exactly why to explain this, but with Starlink, it seems to take a little bit of time to kind of wind up. And so if you'll run these tests a few times, you may find that, see here, we're going to load, we're going to be well over 100 now. And I don't know why it does that. That's just something about Starlink. The big thing is, see now that's 120, so that's pretty good too. And you can use fast. There's also a thing called Test My, but it's got lots of information on it that I don't want to show on a video like this. It's public. But our latency is down under 50 milliseconds. We were getting consistently in the 650 milliseconds when we were on Viasat. And that's not because of our infrastructure inside. We never really saw, I think the fastest we saw on that was like maybe in the 70 or 80s megabits down. And that was kind of like a fluke. That was the outlier. So like when we see a 200 from Starlink, that's kind of what we're seeing here is the outlier. So this is just to kind of demonstrate that you're going to get a lot of ups and downs with Starlink. But when you load things, because the latency is low, it works really fast. So, and then I don't know if you guys remember this, but our dish is right there on top of the roof. And actually, maybe if I turn on the lights, they can see. So as you can see, we have, you know, good line of sight into the northern exposure into the sky. And interestingly enough, I thought that thing would be, you know, like walking left, walking right, moving around a lot. And for practical purposes, we haven't experienced that really. So in conclusion, if you have a 10100 ether fast switch involved in your network somewhere in your home, be sure to get those out of there and then go to a gigabit speed or higher rating. There are some that are rated for 2000 megabits per second, and they usually call them a full duplex configuration, but that's usually just for like really intense gaming systems. So as you can see, you know, we get various results still, and I'm really, really happy with the speeds. Starlink has been so much better than Viasat, and it's also about 65% of the cost of what we had been paying. And that includes the cost of the dish. And here we are below 100 again. So you're going to see that, and we just want to make sure to give you guys this quick tip. If you don't have 10, 100, 1000, which is gigabit speed switches, you need to think about getting them. And we will link to them below. That's just one example. But if you follow that link and there's something else that you like better, then just go for whatever you like better. But just keep in mind, the Wi-Fi that you get with Starlink is already going to be equipped to handle whatever speeds it's capable of. But when you backfeed the rest of your house, you may need to upgrade some of your equipment because you probably didn't have that speed before if you're getting Starlink. So, any other thoughts, camera crew?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Check the links in the description below. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell for notifications if you want updates. Typically, we're not doing Starlink videos or internet videos. We don't do a lot of that on this channel. But it's just an important part of our lives, being that we're in the country, so we wanted to share it with you. So come back for more.